The folks, sir?
Not yet.
I was reading about cockroach milk and I was quite fascinated, Jogan.
We'll come to that, Revati. We will come to that. That was the
teaser.
yeah.
So, Jogan, have you tried the cockroach milk?
No, Ben. It's not as easy. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Sanjana, we can't see you, but I presume we can start. You'll keep adding. Oh, there you go. Okay, fine. So thank you, everybody. Let's start, and people can keep streaming in as it will. So we're absolutely delighted to welcome Rams. He's a dear friend, and it seems a bit strange to read his introduction, but I will do so. Rams has been the founding director of Institute for Stem Cell and Regenerative Medicine, the entire campus, Bangalore Biocluster campus that a lot of people have gone and seen. When he came in, it was all trees. So there was nothing there at that point in time. It was a massive, forest. And he's the CEO. He was the founding CEO again of CCAM, which is again in the news these days quite a bit. As you guys know, he recruited Taslim, who a lot of people here have met in the last 6 months. He's worked in very close coordination with the Department of Biotechnology and the Government of India to try and close the gap between research and its final application. He received a PhD in molecular physics, biophysics, and is the driver behind Ignite Life Science Foundation, a not-for-profit foundation which aims to transform science funding in India. And we'll talk a little bit about all of these things as and when. So Rams, let's start. Thank you, first of all, for being up so late. We really appreciate it because it's 11 at night. But really, thanks a lot. Let's talk, since you have this picture on, we have to start with the background. What's the background for and what does it signify? And then we'll talk about all the other stuff.
Okay, so thank you, Jogan, and thank you all, for inviting me. And I never miss an opportunity when somebody asks me to talk about my work. So I'm very happy to do that anytime. So The background is a structure of an enzyme. It's an enzyme that uses iron in order to make an oxygen radical and catalyze reactions that are very difficult catalyzed. And the reason this is interesting is because all of life was anaerobic for millions of years, and then suddenly oxygen showed up. And then life had to transform itself from being anaerobic to aerobic. And it primarily does that, dealing with the oxygen and using oxygen using iron. And what we've done using this enzyme is over a number of years shown how this iron oxygen interplay works and how they work with each other. There are a lot of applications, right from carrying blood in your oxygen in your blood, to reactions in your liver that break it down, to all kinds of stuff. What we've done, something very interesting with this enzyme is we engineered, for example, for the Department of, I mean, our interest was not this, but the Department of Energy in the US came to us and said, can you make us a bug that will degrade all the TNT that we have accumulated over 50, 80 years, and now we are only using plastic explosives. So we engineered a bacteria that will use this particular enzyme and break down TNT and use TNT, for example, as its carbon and nitrogen source. And then the bacteria will die because it cannot live with anything else other than TNT as food. So this is the structure. And my lifelong interest has been trying to explain biology from the first principles of physics and chemistry, from atomic resolution structures. So that's the background. So thank you all for asking about it. I can never skip.
Thank you. Thanks, Ram. So let's start now. We've talked about, we're all living through the current COVID crisis, and you've always maintained that this is a fantastic opportunity for us to transform science funding, not just for India, but for everywhere else. So let's talk a little bit about what do you mean by that? So
COVID-19 is an interesting wake-up call, right? I mean, let's remember that the last century, we had 3 pandemics in the entire century. And this century, we've already had 3. And we are 20 years in, and we still have a long way to go. So the rate at which pandemics are coming is increasing. This is in spite of the fact that we all pride ourselves in saying, oh, our healthcare systems have improved, we all live longer, we have lived better, we have found a cure for cancer. Yet, we are having this interesting thing that little virus, people argue a virus is alive or not alive. That's a different issue. Has suddenly brought the whole world to halt. Now, this has taught us very, very interesting lessons that in spite of all of the coordination globally, in spite of all of the science that we already know, we still have this pandemic. And globally, there are a number of repercussions for this. We can talk a lot about it. But in the Indian context, it's much more startling. And I'll leave you with one thing that came in Indian Express 2 days ago. And that was actually an article copied out of an Atlantic article, the article that came out in the Atlantic. Jogin sent one today. It was a previous article there. And about vaccines. There are 169 vaccines that are at different stages of clinical trials. This is in a span of 7 months, right? 6-7 months, which is amazing. Not one from India. Indians are very happy that the Serum Institute is going to manufacture an Oxford vaccine. Indians are very happy that Bharat Biotech has tied up with the University of Wisconsin to manufacture its vaccine. But not a single vaccine was developed in India. So there has to be a way by which India moves up the value chain if we really want to have an impact. In this case, it's a global pandemic, somebody else will find the solution for us. But imagine if this was an Indian pandemic, we would not have our own solutions and the Western world won't be interested. What are we doing about this? And how are we thinking about our healthcare? How are we thinking about our research infrastructure? How are we thinking about our healthcare delivery practices? I mean, these are all interesting questions that one can ask. And I, instead of me giving a lecture, I will let this fold answer all these questions as we go along. So I'll stop there and say this is a moment of realization for us to step back and think. And also the fact that we're all stuck at home, I think we have a little more time to think and less time to do.
Yeah.
And that's actually a good thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at, let's transition from that to the status of Indian science. You've been in India for a significant portion of your life. You've obviously, created two of the best centers in the country. Let's talk a little bit about an overall view about what's the status of Indian science.
Oh God. So I'm very afraid to talk about overall science. So I will confine myself to life sciences where I have a little more knowledge.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's very different in the other areas, maybe except in mathematics, but in the other areas, it's probably very similar. I'll give you two examples and stop there. So when I was there, after about 5 years of being there, I was in this big institute and everybody was saying India was doing very well. Indian science is doing very well. We've had a number of things happen. I asked a simple, take all the published papers in India in life sciences and ask, what would happen if we just erase them all? And none of the Indian scientific publications exist. You just take them all out. What would we have changed the path of science? I mean, that's a reasonable question to ask, right? If we have done something that's important, it should change the way we think about science. So we only did it from 1950 till 2015. And that's 65 years of research. And it is startling. There is only one paper in India that if you take it out of, in life sciences, that if you take it out, it will have had a global impact, okay? And that's one single paper. It is stunning that a country of the magnitude of India, after gaining independence in the first 65 years, managed to produce one paper that is of any significance. You can erase everything else, all of the Institute of Science papers and NCBS papers, TFR papers, you can just erase them all. The global science would not have changed. I mean, that's the impact we have had. And I can also tell you some reasons for the impact. And I'll tell you a completely different perspective from the investment India has made in life sciences. You all here come to go to ISC or one of these big institutes and say, oh, is India investing a lot in science? I currently work at Purdue, and Purdue is famous for engineering. It's a number 3, ranking is funny. We can use it the way we want it, but I'm going to use it as an arbitrary measure. Purdue is ranked number 3 in engineering in the US, but it's ranked number 45 for life science research. We don't have a medical school. We are ranked number 45. Purdue's budget, I kind of oversee the life science budget here. Purdue's budget for life science is close to $500 million a year. The Department of Biotechnology, which funds most of biology research in India, their budget is $300 million a year. So the entire nation's life science research budget is smaller than the 45th ranked university in the US. So we really have a crisis. I mean, if you ask me to sum Indian science, I've given you the impact, I've given you an idea of investment. I can go on, but I think these two parameters show where we are.
Yeah. But then, okay, just out of curiosity, could you please mention the paper that we were talking about? The one paper?
So there's a paper by a person called G.N. Ramchandran. He did this work when he was in Madras University, and then he moved to Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, and set up the molecular biophysics unit. This paper talks about protein structure and says, what are the possible conformations that protein structures can have? If you look behind the screen, you see these little helical structures, and then you look at these little arrows. The helices are the helical structures are called alpha helices, and the arrows are called beta strands. And he predicted before protein structures were known that what proteins will be made up of was alpha helices and beta strands and connecting things. And that's an amazing paper that even today, we have now found a structure that doesn't have these three. And all structures are only made up of these three. So it's amazing that we use it as a validation that if you find a protein structure that doesn't fit into the Ramchandran hypothesis, then your structure is wrong.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's very good. Okay. So we talked about investments. We talked about the fact that, we need investments here. How do we justify investments in a country that is as starved of investments as we are, because everything needs money and we have less money for everything. So how do we get science to justify for the right kind of investments?
While I said that we haven't had a single significant paper, that doesn't mean Indian science has not produced anything. Yeah. Indian scientific research, in terms of its ability to solve India's problems, have actually done quite well. And in the beginning of this conversation, somebody talked about Gagandeep Kang, Cherry Kang, and Dr. Ban. So I'll pick on them, right? Instead of picking on somebody else, I'll pick on them. I know them very well. I'll pick on them. So if you look before the rotavirus vaccine, and I'm picking it again because of the COVID-19 connection, right?
Yeah, of course.
There are annually, 2013, for example, 78,000 children below the age of 2 died of rotavirus infection in India. Okay, and that's when the Indian vaccine came out. Last year, 2018, the last year we have data, 1,360 children died. Can you see the impact we have had? And this is going to be year after year, and it's going to have multiple generational impact. This is not an impact of saying, oh, 78,000, 1,360, you can't subtract it, because this is going to happen every year. And the hope, I'm hoping in 2019, for which we don't have data, it's probably 700. And in 2 more years, we won't have any. So imagine the impact that we would have in terms of public health in just making a vaccine. But this was developed by the grit of Dr. Ban and the hard work of few people like Gagandeep Khan, about 25 years of work before we built a one vaccine. And globally, people would ask us, why would you do that, right? Today we have COVID-19, and in 6 months we have vaccine candidates. We didn't build the infrastructure. We didn't build the immunology infrastructure. We didn't build the virology infrastructure. We didn't build the production infrastructure. And if today Serum Institute is the biggest manufacturer of vaccines, Bharat Biotech makes vaccines, all of these can be traced back to this vision of trying to make one Indian vaccine. We might have become a manufacturing country, but the point is, without that investment, we would not have even been here. The question now is, can we go back and say, hey, if we took 25 years, if we built an infrastructure, why aren't we in the race at COVID-19?
Yes,
that is actually the question, right?
Yes.
If we did the rotavirus vaccine ourselves,
Yes.
If we have the Serum Institute, we know how to make it. Why are we not in one of these 169?
Yes.
Unfortunately, we don't have a sustainable funding mechanism for science in India that is large enough that can keep the science of good people going for a long enough time that, it's investment in science, and investment is very funny. It's investment in science at peacetime that allows you to use it during wartime. And when we didn't have a pandemic, and if you didn't invest, you will not be able to reap the benefits of it.
So that's the problem, right? It was a one-time thing. We didn't invest after that, and that's why we're certainly exposed. And
exactly.
If you just look at about 75,000 kids' lives being saved over a 10, 15-year period, then you suddenly start seeing the massive impact and that's just one vaccine.
It is more than that. I talked in the Indian context. The rotavirus vaccine that was available from the Western world was so expensive that not only could Indians not afford it, 5 billion people in the world who are infected by rotavirus vaccines couldn't afford it. So this is an Indian work, but it also has dramatically reduced the burden of rotavirus death in Africa, in South America, in Southeast Asia. So to think of the 78,000 in the Indian context, I think is a very poor impact calculation. The real impact is huge.
Yeah, got it.
Because we managed to do it well.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. I didn't realize that. Yes, you're right. It's not just India, but everywhere else. It's the bottom 5 billion, which will absolutely. So now it's easy to justify investment in rotavirus, right? In sort of a hindsight 2020 thing, saying we should have invested in immunology and virology, which do not necessarily directly translate into the rotavirus vaccine. But now that we talk about the success, we can say, yes, of course we should have invested. But that doesn't happen in science, right? Because a lot of these science projects, the criticism of such a lot of science projects in academic institutions, not just in India, but everywhere else, to be quite honest, is that these are all esoteric questions that scientists are grappling with, and whether they result in a real world change is always questionable, quote unquote. So how do you figure out whether to fund something that may not be translatable at first glance? Give me some examples, and feel free to have a separate segment on the cockroach milk discovery when because obviously there's a lot of people talking about it.
Okay, so I'll talk about the cockroach milk at the end, because I don't want it to become a cockroach milk conversation alone, because science is much larger than cockroach milk conversation.
Yes.
I can give you a number of examples. So I'll talk about others' work and then come to a few examples from my own work. And I talked to you about this naphthalene dioxygenase. Our interest was not to degrade TNT. Okay, our interest was very simple. Our interest was to understand how electrons, this ion can give an electron to the oxygen, make it into a radical, and keep that radical in place. And then the oxygen radical then will catalyze the reaction and keep back. Okay? So that was the interest. It turned out into something else. But I want to set up the Stem Cell Institute. I'm going to tell you a stem cell related example. And this is something that everybody understands. The stem cell biology existed for a number of years. We have talked about genome editing, genome engineering, all of this for a number of years. But there was not easy to actually engineer a gene and make a product that can actually be used in a health setting. That never happened. For about 30 years, it never happened. There was a couple of people who were studying something completely different. They were studying bacteria seem to get infected constantly with a thing called a phage. Okay, they also get infected. There are smaller things in the bacteria that infect them. These bacteria somehow seem to remember how this phage is infecting them. And just like we have an adaptive immune system, they seem to also have developed an immune system too. And they were interested in how this bacteria was managing to do this. And it does it in a very interesting fashion. The way it does it is, as soon as a phage comes, and when the phage is replicating, it just cuts pieces of DNA from the phage and sticks itself into its own DNA and says, okay, now I know this is foreign DNA. So it's collecting a library of foreign DNA so that it can respond very quickly. But how is it doing it? It has found a mechanism to specifically cut a piece and stick a piece in a particular place. The system is called the CRISPR-Cas system. Now, suddenly, when stem cell biologists heard about this, they said, oh shit, I can go and engineer cells with this system without actually infecting my cell with the virus and causing all other kinds of damage. It completely revolutionized the way we think about cell biology. And if today we have cell-based therapies, it's because somebody was interested in understanding how phage infects bacteria. You could never have predicted it. So investment in science cannot therefore be measured based on, I am doing this because I want to solve this problem. It has to be based on, is this good? Is it a good question? And what will happen? The knowledge that we will get when we answer the question will have unintended consequences. The rotavirus vaccine is what I call incremental science, whereas this is disruptive science.
Yes. Because this completely created a new strain of science, which was hitherto unknown.
Absolutely. So the investment in science, therefore, has to be in a long term. It cannot be saying that I want to solve a problem, because in order to solve, you can't solve a problem if you don't fully understand it. And you don't know what bits of understanding or what is the piece of knowledge will fix it, right? If you didn't know how a bullock cart worked, you wouldn't know the little rod that held the wheel in the axle would be important, right? So to say that that's the least important bit is useless, because without that, your car won't run. So this is important. And in the same thing with many things that my lab does. And I can give you repeated examples of why we just follow curiosity, and when we observe something and we can't, it bothers us, and then we follow that, right? I'll give you two examples, and I'll come to the cockroach milk second. I'll come to something else first, which is something that we just published right now, and it has become really hot. There is a system that there is the most used solvent in chemical industry. I'm saying this because Jogan hasn't heard this story.
Yes, I have not. Yes, it'll pique my interest.
So this is, it's called dimethyl formamide. The chemical industry depends on solvents. And solvents that can dissolve both hydrophobic compounds, ethanol kind of compounds, as well as compounds that are water soluble, together are very good because then they can put both these and do interesting reactions. But the solvent also has to be stable at high temperature, at high pressure, should not break it down. About 100 years ago, a German chemist created this molecule called dimethyl formamide. It doesn't matter what it is, DMF we will call it, which had all of these properties. And that is the most used chemical solvent in the world.
Yes, right.
Now, you can just follow where DMF is used most in the world, and you can follow the chemical industry's growth. Today, we use about 200 million tons of dimethyl formamide, from pharmaceutical industry to petroleum industry to every possible industry uses dimethyl formamide. Now, interestingly, we never realized for the past 100 years, but in the last 20 years, we are beginning to get data that the same reason that is so stable is also causes hepatotoxicity. It goes and sits in our liver and doesn't break down. And we are beginning to fall sick because of this environmental pollution. And all of this DMF is being released into water. They are being released into soil. So in Kanpur, where there's a lot of leather industry, where they use a lot of DMF, we actually found a bug that does something very interesting. This bacteria lives on DMF. It will break down the dimethyl formamide and use carbon and nitrogen from dimethyl formamide as its carbon and nitrogen source. Right? So we fished out this protein, fished out this bacteria, sequenced the genome, found out the enzyme, the gene sequence for this enzyme that does this, and worked on the mechanism of how it breaks it down. Okay? And it's very interesting. Imagine evolution has happened in 100 years. This didn't exist 100 years ago. And bacteria has figured out how to break it down. And we still don't know how to break it down. We know how to make it. We don't know how to break it down. So now what we're doing is the opposite, right? We're taking this enzyme, putting it in a column, and we are asking the question, can we put this in large columns and all of the wastewater coming out of these industries go through this column, and we break down dimethyl formamide. But our interest was not breaking it down. Our interest was to understand what is this bacteria doing with it, right? It was because we studied the bacteria, did the genome sequencing, we found the enzyme, and then we realized we could use the enzyme. I mean, this is Chetan's work. I mean, this is PhD thesis work of Chetan.
Okay.
It was just joined you guys. So,
Yeah,
so what I'm saying is,
okay.
so it's amazing that we can do this. The same thing with cockroach milk.
Yeah.
The cockroach milk story is also because of an undergrad student who wanted a job, part-time job, and therefore decided to work with this woman called Barbara Stay. And Barbara Stay is a cockroach lady. She studies cockroaches all her life. And his goal was very simple. He had to maintain all the species of cockroaches. And when somebody would email and say, I want a species of cockroach, they would send cockroaches to them. And he found this one specific cockroach called the Pacific beetle cockroach, or Diploptera punctata, it's a technical name. It's actually very interesting because most cockroaches lay eggs, right? All of you must have seen cockroach walking,
unfortunately,
dragging something on the back, right? Dragging something on the back. What is in the back is called the birth sac, in which it has the eggs. And then the eggs fall out and everything happens. But this particular cockroach had the birth sac more interesting. It filled the birth sac with some fluid and milk. And then what happened is the embryos, the eggs hatched, and the nymphs grew there, and they walked out of the birth sac ready to mate. I mean, this is amazing. So whatever this cockroach was doing, and it was beautifully crystalline, it was solid crystals. So the question we asked was, hey, this is interesting. And we just picked out the crystal and spent 10 years trying to understand what it is. And then it turned out this is a protein, lipid, sugar complex that's complete food. And the most nutritious thing we ever know. And more interestingly, it's a crystal. Why is it a crystal? Because when the cockroach actually, it's very interesting, the back of the cockroach is closed, this embryo is closed till it actually becomes a nymph and comes out, which means it cannot excrete anything. So what it's doing is, the crystal is in an equilibrium between solution and in a solid state, right? If you put a lot of sugar, it'll crystallize.
Yeah.
If you want to dissolve some more of the sugar, you can just add a little bit of water. Or I can do the opposite thought experiment. I can remove specifically some sugar from the crystal, what in that solution. I will reduce the concentration of the sugar in the solution. Some more crystals will dissolve. So these were crystalline, bathed in this highly nutritious milk. Now, as the embryo drank the milk, the concentration of this protein went down. Some more of the crystals dissolved. So it's also time-released food. I don't even have to do anything. Right? I don't need to excrete because I'm only using what I need. So now we can ask questions, right? Now that 10, 12 years of work later, we can ask, okay, what can we use this for? Right? So we can think of a number of different uses. And I joke about a number of different uses. My favorite joke about the use is that I like to drink beer. And instead of drinking regular beer, can I put this gene that makes this protein into yeast that makes a large amount of this protein in my beer? And if somebody accuses me of drinking beer, I can say, no, I'm actually drinking a protein shake and I still enjoy my beer.
And you would be technically right. Right. Yeah.
I'll be technically right. So there are a number of things one can do. And there are also medical applications as well. But I'll tell you funny applications. Yeah. So we have to invest in science. And more interestingly, both the CRISPR-Cas system and the dimethylformamide work that I told you about, or the cockroach milk, something else happened, which we ignored. We developed a number of technologies because existing scientific technologies couldn't solve these problems. So we developed technologies along the way to solve these problems. These technologies can be now used by other people to solve other problems, right? I mean, this is like, what is the biggest impact of the American space program? I think it's the ballpoint pen, right? Teflon.
Yeah.
So the technologies we developed in order to solve the curiosity-driven problems also have an impact. That they can solve problems that again have unintended consequences of problem solving. So we have to think of this in multiple ways and not think, why is this guy interested in this cockroach? That's a poor way to think about science.
Fascinating. I mean, I did not know the chemical stuff, so that's great. And now have a bit more respect for Chetan, I have to admit, the fact that he was doing all this lovely work. So just to set the context, we'll have two more questions, and then I have questions coming in from WhatsApp and on here. So we'll shift to that, Rams. The first is, if you had a magic wand to do this, how would you transform funding for science in India? What would you do? And what would, and I'll combine the two questions and say, well, we are where we are with COVID, right? We know, okay, fine, we didn't have any vaccines that were true Indian vaccines, but we are where we are. What do we do now? Because this is not the first or the last pandemic that's going to hit India. What would you do?
So I think if you think about globally how tough science funding happens, I think the problem is you need a threshold amount of infrastructure which can be sustained in a consistent fashion, which then can be mobilized when you want to solve a problem. I mean, that's what I call a wartime problem solving, right? Now, first you need to create this threshold amount of infrastructure. For that, there is an investment required. And second, you need to invest in keeping this threshold state of the art and running. Now, if you look globally, in the US, for example, the budget for the National Institute of Health is about $40 billion a year, right? The DBT's budget is 300 million. So there is no comparison. Yet the National Science Foundation is another funding agency, which has a $10 billion fund, right? And then the total funding that the US government puts into science is about $90 billion to $100 billion with a B. Now, that is still only about 40% of the research funding in the US. So that's the interesting thing that we need to remember. 60% of its research funding comes from philanthropy and industry. So that funding then can fund stuff that government cannot easily fund. It can fund high-risk things. It can fund things that can bear fruit 5 years from now, 8 years from now. The government money is used to build infrastructure, can be used to pay salaries, but it cannot fund the risk. There is this thing that has to come. And also, there has to be a vision of how to do this. So I think here is where this was one of the reasons I left India, because there are a few problems I had started working on in India that I got scooped. And then it just hit me. What am I doing? I'm working very hard. I'm one of the most funded people in India, yet I can't compete and I get scooped.
Tell me, can you explain a little bit more for everybody else? I know what that means, but when you say scoop,
Okay.
Can you go into a little bit of detail?
So we started working on a specific scientific problem on understanding how we coat ourselves with sugar molecules. And that's how immune response works. Is it looks, the outside of our cell is a layer of molecules. And we want to know what is this outside layer of molecules? How do we coat ourselves with that? That we can determine how the other cell recognizes us. When two cells are recognizing each other, you're recognizing the outermost thing, including in the case of SARS-CoV-19. Yeah. And most of them are actually sugars attached to protein molecules. So we wanted to understand the machinery of how this works. And we started this work in India. We were the first to clone these enzymes that do this work. And we want to determine the structures of these. And about 3 years later, we had made enough progress that we thought, okay, we are going to get it. We had crystals of these proteins and we want to determine the structure. There's a group in Oxford that said, aha, this is an interesting protein. Rams has been working on it. We are going to work on it from a different source. And I know this Simon very well. He says, hey, Rams, do you mind if I work? I said, you can work on it. I'm way ahead of you. I mean, that was the arrogance, right? But what I forgot was that I was getting 30 lakhs a year funding to do this research. He was getting 300,000 pounds a year to do this research. I don't have a synchrotron in India, and the government of India's money would say, oh, you want to go collect data in a synchrotron. India doesn't have one. And if you want to go out and collect data, the government looks at me going for a foreign trip as if I'm going on a vacation, right? I mean, that's the Indian bureaucrats' attitude about me going on a foreign trip. In spite of the fact that the way I would do it is I would take, there is a Delhi-Chicago flight, and I would go to the synchrotron in Chicago, which leaves midnight in Delhi. I would reach Chicago 7 a.m. in the morning. I would have data collection time at 9 o'clock. I would rent a car, go to the synchrotron and reach at 9 a.m., collect data till 9 a.m. the next day. And the flight leaves back at 1:30, and I would drive back and get into the plane and come back. But I could still do this only once in 5 months. And I still had to spend all my time answering audit queries as to why I am going every 3 months to the US. Right?
For a day.
But for a day. Yeah. So they thought I was doing something strange, right? I was smuggling or whatever, Now, whereas Simon has a synchrotron, 1 hour drive from him in the Diamond Light Source. So he was going every week. So they beat us to it. And there are more examples like this. And I asked myself a question. I can spend my time in India and do incremental science, or I can leave India and do the science I want to do. And I choose to leave India so that I could do the science I want to do. I mean, at the bottom line, as much as I enjoyed creating INSTEM, enjoyed creating CCAM, that was not why I became a scientist, right? I really became a scientist to do the science I want to do. So I ran away. So we need to get this investment. So would I have stayed back? Yeah. If there was a Howard Hughes Institute in India, which would fund me like an Howard Hughes investigator would get funded. Or if there was a Wellcome Trust in India that was big enough, like the Wellcome Trust funds people in UK and says, okay, you're doing good work, Rams. We're going to fund you. We're going to give you 2 crores a year. You can do whatever you want. We won't ask you questions as far as you're productive. The only measure is your productivity. I would have stayed. No, I was writing grants and getting 25 lakhs a year, 30 lakhs there. And it's just impossible to do. So if you want to change the system, we need to think outside of the government, create an entity that will fund good research consistently for significant amount of time. And that's why before I left, we all pushed and created this Ignite Life Science Foundation. The hope is we don't have a Howard Hughes. We don't have the Wellcome Trust who will put in $20 billion upfront and say, use the proceeds to fund Indian science. We don't have those people. Now, but there are enough people in India together who can fund $500 million. So can we create an organization in India that will then take money from a lot of people, but do it professionally, fund good science, mentor the good scientists, make sure we do science that's relevant to India, in India, for India, right? Yes. I mean, that is the intention of creating Ignite Life Sciences Foundation. And that is what I'm now most passionate about, and I spend most of my time trying to do. Yes. I don't want 5 other people like me leave, because I know many young people have gone back. I've recruited many young people, and people want to leave. How do we do this? Can we not, that's the point.
Fantastic, fantastic. I have to get to the questions now because I'm getting things on WhatsApp and here. So I'm going to, thanks. This was a brilliant overview as always. So I'm going to go through the specific questions, which we can knock out really fast. One is, what are the current vaccine trials going on in India? So you want to take that or?
Sure. I mean, I can answer very quickly. It's a short question. There are no vaccine trials going on in India for a vaccine that is being developed in India. Zero.
Yes.
There are international companies that are doing vaccine trials in India, but nothing of Indian origin.
So Oxford and Bharat Biotech and these are the two, right?
Yeah, there are the major ones. There are a few others going on, but they're all international vaccines.
Yeah. What about the Cadila vaccine? The Cadila one that is going on?
Nobody knows what is going on. So there is very little scientific publications, peer-reviewed publications to verify any of the claims that Cadila has made.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So I can't give you a quick answer because I've not seen anything.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. The next question is there any research going on which is from Padmashri, on enzymes which can break down plastic? You can guess it's coming from one of our eco warriors.
I wish there were. There are some enzymes that break down plastic. People have identified them. I don't think there's any serious research going on in India or globally in this because it's a very, very hard problem. I know a number of people are working on it, but we don't know who is going to hit the jackpot. There are a few enzymes people are doing. And also the problem is plastic is not one molecule. The polymers of different kinds, different types, it's actually very complex. So to think about one enzyme that will break down everything is going to be very, very hard. But there is an enormous amount of global effort going on in this. But I don't think nobody has got lucky. Let me put it that way. And this is the point to remember also. You have to fund 50 people or 100 people to do this. And
because
fund them consistently. And fund them consistently. And they will fail. But remember, only one person needs to succeed
to get the entire ecosystem back in. I mean, just imagine if we had a bug which can degrade plastic, then
absolutely, but we don't have them yet. But people are working on it. Okay, I have the next. I can read the next questions, right? Are we studying bats? Are we studying bats and their immune system in India? They seem to be a creature which seems to coexist with a lot of virus. Yes. In fact, it's fantastic because there's a person called Umar Ramakrishnan who studies bats. And I'm glad you asked this question. There is infrastructure for some of the work she was doing was not there. In fact, there is a bat festival in the Northeast, which is very interesting. Where what they do is many of the tribals, even though they fight with each other, they come once a year and they all kill bats on that particular day. And then put it in a cauldron and do something to it, and they all drink the blood of bats. And these tribes never got zoonotic diseases, even though they lived very closely with them, because they were constantly immunizing themselves with the new zoonosis that's happening, right? So Umar Ramakrishnan decided to study that. She went and collected the bats from the Northeast and then worked with somebody in Singapore in order to begin to ask the first questions. She has been threatened to go to jail because she shared the sample with somebody in Singapore. I mean, this is bizarre. The government won't give her the resources to do the work here. We now know it's extremely important, but she decided to do the work with whatever money he had. She and a few of her students personally go to the Northeast, collect the bats, find the bats which have a large amount of viruses in them, which are living close proximity to humans, bring their blood, begin to do the sequencing, work with somebody at Singapore to get the work done, publish a paper, and the director of the National Center for Biological Sciences says, we're going to arrest you and your faculty member because you've broken the National Biodiversity Act. I mean, this is the most bizarre government system in the world. And the NBA Act is one of the worst acts for Indian science. And if any of you have any influence in the government, your one act has to be pulled under the rug and chopped and thrown away. It's the National Biodiversity Act. So, I mean, don't even get me started on this bat business because it just makes me very, very angry and upset at how good you are penalizing well-meaning scientists. Okay. So,
So that was
the
the
next
second
question
question
was
as
that.
well. Yeah,
Also, yeah. Can the IT services model work wherein we try to pull in global funds into India, but then we can production or no? It will work. We can put some money, but the problem is this: it's a services industry, right? I'm sorry to say, many of you are in IT companies. You're doing services. You're not generating knowledge. The Google didn't happen in India. Microsoft didn't happen in India. IBM didn't happen in India. Facebook didn't happen in India. You are providing services for other people. I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about something happening from the ground up and transformation, where you do the discovery here. Can we be, blockchain didn't happen in India. Neural networks didn't happen in India. So, but we are very quickly picking it up and providing solutions. I mean, that is incremental science.
Yeah.
The type of science I'm talking about is, can we do science that will change the way people think? When will we become leaders in what we do? That requires a long-term view and significant investments. While I do agree we can get money from outside for that, that's a two-headed problem. I lived in India for 10 years, and the biggest problem I had was all of our big Indian scientists like to become fellows of the National Academy of Science, fellows of the Royal Societies. And therefore, they would invite the people who could get them into those to come and give gyan to the Indian scientists. So these Indian scientists who are in these academies in the US and Europe would come and give generously advise Indians how to do science. The problem is they've never worked in India. So they don't understand how science in India works, what problems Indian science is facing. So we can't take money from people, but the decisions on how to do the science and how to fund the science and how to execute the science should be done locally. And that's why if you look at Ignite, all of the scientists in our board are people who have done science in India, and they know and been very successful in what they do. So that's what you want. And you get these few people, put them together and let them help us find the other young people, fund them and mentor them, right? Because Venkiram Krishnan is a very good friend. He can give me gyan, but he's never done science in India. So we have to be very careful about this idea that somebody who's doing great science in the West can come and give us advice on how the science in India should be done. Then you'll be solving the West problems and not the problems relevant to India.
Absolutely. Just for everybody's, Venki is the Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. I think when? But a few years back.
6 years ago. Yeah.
6 years back. Yeah. Okay. So then I have another question that came in through WhatsApp, which is, you've talked a lot about, very passionately about science, etc. And what about the curiosity that needs to go into the next generation of students? Because our schools have this remarkable talent of snuffing out curiosity, especially in the science fields. And I speak from personal experience. So
that very good question. So I work. I mean, this is the biggest challenge that I've had when I was in India, and Jogin knows I always spend time talking to children. If every generation, and if you think about evolution as a phenomenon where survival of the fittest, the difference between our generation and the younger generation is that there are more people, and therefore anything they do, they have to do better because the competition is higher. So they got to be. So evolution has decided that they are smarter, right? I mean, we cannot argue with this. But now the question is, as our generation, do we understand that they are smarter and then provide them with the opportunities to use their smartness in the correct way? If you kill their curiosity, they will not be able to do that. So we need to change our education system at a much earlier stage in order to promote curiosity. And to me, one of the biggest detriment of Indian school system is examinations. I think we should just pull the examinations out. There shouldn't be examinations at all. There is no need to have examinations. And the second thing is a lot of hands-on work and projects. And the third thing that we do, which I'm hoping will change with the new education policy, I don't know how long it will take, is that we need to be able to not discriminate between science and social sciences, that people should be able to study everything and then understand and figure out what is it that they like and follow their heart, right? And to somehow to say physics is engineering, physics is important, engineering is important, medicine is important, social science is not important, is a thing that we have created. And the biggest problem in India for me is, it's globally, it's a problem, but it's a much larger problem in India is for some reason we say, oh, you're a girl, you should not study math. You should not study science. We might be in a little elite middle class group or an upper middle class group, which might not think this way, but this is true majority of India. So that's another big problem that we have that we need to overcome. So there are a number of things that we need to do. So there is another question here. There is a push from government for research to be more short-term, immediate outcome oriented. Absolutely. Doesn't that mitigate against the deeper scientific inquiry? Absolutely. See, there has to be this right balance, right? You need places like CCAM, where when good science happens, you can translate. But there will be nothing to translate. The word translate itself means that I have something in one language that I'm going to change it into another language. But if I don't have anything to translate, what am I going to translate? I mean, that's the crisis in India currently. I do think translation is important. I do think science is, has to, if you don't translate, you're wasting it. You know, there is really, there has to be a whole group of people who think about what is the new science coming out? How can I use them for the benefit of society? I mean, that's a very, very important activity.
Yes.
But you can't put the cart before the horse and say, I'm going to look at translating science when you don't have anything to translate. So we need to create, we need to have both, and the correct balance is what we need. One without the other is useless. I think we just can publish papers and that's useless too.
I've got one last question and then I'll open it up, guys, for anybody else who wants to ask anything else. Sorry. Oh, I lost that. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where I got the question. Okay, so there was a general question on what do you think about, about the current crisis that is going on? Do you think there will be a vaccine that will come up in the next 6 to 9 months? What's the roadmap of life that people should look at for the next 18 months? All right, you know, they asked me, what do I do?
I don't know the answer to that question, right? But I'm following literature like all of you, so my guesses are going to be based on literature and a few friends that I have who are very closely working in this. Let me turn this question around and say, why do we need a vaccine? If everybody wears masks for 8 weeks, we are done with it.
Yes.
As a human race, we have our modern healthcare system has taught us something really, really bad, that I can pop a pill and go about doing what I want to do. And I think the race for the vaccine is yet another example of doing it. And in my own, if I had a choice, I'm hoping that they won't find a vaccine in the next 6 to 9 months. And then we will realize that there was a simpler way to do this, that we change our habits. Why do we actually have to get diabetes and why do we have to get hypertension and lead a stressful life? This is what I said is a big moment in the way we think about science. And I want to connect the different things, right? If you think about how we invest in healthcare today, you can divide them into 3 parts. One large part we can invest is in cancer and neurodegenerative diseases. I call these age-related diseases, right? Because we're all growing, we all are living longer and longer, and therefore more of us are getting cancer, more of us are, and there is a big market for that, and government is investing a lot in it, okay? Then there is a second type of diseases. This I call economic diseases, or what I call lifestyle diseases, diabetes, obesity, anything, hypertension. You take the whole class of these. These are all diseases because of lifestyle and our inability to, they're economic reasons, right? It's the stress, it's drive for development, all of this kind of stuff, right? When you take fast food and everything like that. Then there's a third, which is the infectious diseases, which we thought we had conquered till COVID-19 hit, right? Yes. Oh, antibiotics came. And there was the origin of medical system as infectious disease. It's were kind of the origin, right? So now, think about who's dying out of COVID-19. It is those who are old who are dying, which means you are finding a cure for cancer in them, but you're ignoring the zoonotic diseases and you're increasing, changing this, and they are at higher risk. Second, those who we already know, those who have hypertension and diabetes or comorbidities for COVID-19. So you're spending so much time on curing this, but you will not spend time on zoonotic diseases or research on understanding infection. The trick is healthcare somehow has become equivalent to disease management. It is not healthcare. How can I cure cancer? It's not how to prevent cancer. It is more about how can I stop people from getting stressed and not have them to do this? How can I not destroy my environment and increase pollution so that I won't get COPD and get acute lung disease, right? So we have somehow gotten away from this idea. And this is now has happened for the past 100 years. So it's not. But what COVID-19 has done is expose these chinks in our armor. That's what we have been doing for 100 years might look like this, but life on Earth is a marathon and not a sprint. Guys, you're doing very well in the sprint. You're actually not doing very well in the marathon. That is the big realization from COVID-19.
And
these are all connected.
Yes, and the biggest realization we had is how fragile is this entire healthcare that we always talk about. I mean, we won't talk about the US because that will take more time than what we have today. But there are a lot of economies which have a lot of money, but still weren't able to pull through. Okay, there is another question and we're running out of time. So can you just answer that and then?
Yeah, is there a worldwide study by WHO of all the communities which have developed immunity for a few organisms? Today, with a lot of travel, we have infected disease mechanisms everywhere. Can we have a cooperative way? Well, this is multiple questions. I will answer each one of them separately. Is there a worldwide study? There has been worldwide studies on very specific diseases that we know there are people immune to HIV, there are people immune to TB, there are people immune to malaria. This is well known. There is a worldwide study. But there is also a lot of travel, so therefore this, But there is no easy cooperative mechanism to prevent, for a simple reason that we have hijacked our healthcare system and made it into a part of our economic development agenda, that it is focused more on GDP growth by pharma companies rather than based on how better we live. So we are taking the wrong measurement of our healthcare index. So if you ask the companies in India, the pharma companies in India are doing pretty well, right? Because they're all making generics and they're making pretty money. They're contributing well to the Indian GDP, but they are not answering questions. So I think we have a problem is that there has to be a mindset change in policy and how we think about healthcare. So that's where the problem is.
And I think the cooperative way of living life, I don't know if you answered that question.
Yes, the cooperative way of living life is that is amazing what COVID-19 has done, right? China in January published the genome. It never would have happened 25 years ago. China would never tell anybody else, oh, we have an infection, here is the genome. You're going to get it. Let's all work together, right? The vaccine is being discovered and the experiments were done in Oxford. It's being scaled up in India. So I run a center here where we have 40 different labs from all over the US coming and doing cryo-electron microscopy of COVID-19 at Purdue, because we are the only place where we have a BSL-3 facility where we can do this. But there are 40 labs from all over the coming and doing it. So the ability to cooperate, and the reason in 8 months we have 167 vaccines is simply because of that cooperation.
The cooperation, yes, it is.
This has taught us to learn to. My worry is, will we go back to my vaccine, your vaccine, my money, your money when this is over? That would be a bad thing.
Okay. Thank you, Rams. We're just about 1 hour into this. We talk 3 times a week, but every time we talk, I learned something new. So thank you for taking the time. And especially thanks because we know this is about almost midnight in Purdue. So thanks a lot. We truly appreciate it. Any last words that you want to leave us with?
My last word is a group of influential people. If you really believe that you want to change the life of, if I look at SVP, you want to change the life of 1 million people or 5 million people in so many years, you're not going to change that by giving charity. Not going to change that by providing water. You're going to not give a man a fish and change the life. You're going to give a fishing rod. And the fishing rod is science. If you want to have, in the same amount of time, with the same amount of money, if you want to change, have an impact on 200 million people put your money in science.
Hmm.
Fund good science in India. You will have a bigger impact than giving charity. And Indians have to, this is the biggest challenge I have in India, is we would give charity and not philanthropy. We always think of somebody being happy when they eat the food in our house and go away. And I fed a poor guy and I feel very good about it, but the guy is going to starve tomorrow. Can we change that? And if you guys really want to have the impact, I'm sorry, I'm being very brutal. If you guys as SVP want to have that impact of, we want to affect 5 million lives in 5 years, invest in science. You will invest, if 5 years of investment in science, you will impact 200 million people. That's my last words. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Rams. This was fantastic and fascinating. Thanks. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, guys. All right, bikes. Thank you, guys. Everybody. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Thanks. Good night.
Okay. So that was a nice, as usual, he's very provocative. I've known him for some time and he's very provocative. So a lot to think about. Let's now turn our attention back to SVP. And we have a small presentation which we will hope will not take more than half an hour. So Sanjana, can you share the screen, please? There we go. Thank you. Okay, so here's our agenda. If you go to slide 2, thank you. So we'll do a small snapshot of investees. We have some very good updates on A3, Y40 and solid waste
Sanjana, can you
management.
just make it full screen?
He's already, oh yeah.
Yeah, just a second.
And we'll talk about the chapter update and then some final thoughts, given that this is my last one. I had to put some things together of what are the next steps and etc. There we go. No, I don't think it'll. There we go. Thank you. So let's do a small snapshot on investees. It always surprises me. Let's go to the next slide, Sanjana. It always surprises me at the end. I always fret, and she knows this. Oh, what happened? We've got a slide which doesn't exist. So I'm gonna. Guys, you gotta bear with us a little bit.
Yeah, that slide for some reason isn't showing up.
Okay. Okay, then no, there's a lot of stuff in here which is not showing up. So
it may be because you're on slideshow mode.
No,
make it regular mode.
No, it's because I changed stuff in the morning, so it might be. No. I've got Sanjana. Why don't I share the screen? That might be easier because I've got the.
Okay, perfect. You can share screen now. Yeah.
Thank you. Give me a moment. There we go. Okay. So as I was saying, can everybody hear and see? I presume yes. Okay. So as I was saying, I always fret whenever there is a meeting and say, has there enough work been done? Have people, are we working together a lot? I see a lot of silence on WhatsApp, etc. But it always surprises me. In 1 month, we had 35 partner and NGO calls. We had a fantastic pivotal brainstorming session on lake rejuvenation. So that's 35, more than 1 a day. And if you count 20 days, much more than maybe close to 2 a day. But people are talking, and there is lots of activity happening, because that. Always, she knows this, and most of my CMC knows this. Our partners engaged, and that certainly seems to be the case based on the amount of activity going on with our partners. We approved 1 new grant for Tide. Tide was our, it's very dear to me because Tide was our first grant that we have ever given actually across India, and now we're bringing them back. So it's fantastic. We've kicked off the A3 engagement. On actually the lake rejuvenation and massive progress on the solid waste management initiative. Can we, sorry, I'm just going to, can we have Sashi for Y4J, maybe give Abu and Padmashi give a small snapshot each, if you can, please, for Youth for Jobs, A-Tree, and the solid waste management initiatives. Sashi, maybe you can go first.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
morning, everybody. So Youth for Jobs is an industry organization that started working with the SVP Hyderabad 3 years ago. And they started their work in Bangalore 3 years ago as well, but we started engaging with them 1.5 to 2 years ago. The first engagement happened to be a CSR engagement from FlowServe, trying to give them funding for training 50 students who are undergraduates or 11th, 10th, 12th failed candidates and getting them employed. So what Youth for Jobs does is sensitivity workshops in corporates, identifying if they're ready for inclusivity, and then working with them in identifying positions that can become inclusive, coming back looking for candidates that will match that position, train them, and help
Right.
with it. Now what we are working with them, we're starting to work with them. The launch is planned for the 17th of August, and I would like for interested partners to chime in whatever capacity they want to. Is a College Connect program, wherein they either set up a smart inclusion center inside a college campus, or they work offline, providing them courses which can be integrated with their main course, or work online for 2 weekends of giving 80 hours of skill gap training, basically soft skills, getting ready for interviews, getting ready to face the industry, and so on, and help them match with the employer and get them placement. What is interesting is we thought this may not take off during the current situation where the institutions have not opened up, but they kind of surprised Usha and I were really surprised to hear the progress that they made even before the launch, which is they've connected with Bangalore University, they've connected with 4 other colleges, they've got the director from Bangalore University to okay their approach, and they've gone to look at students who passed last year and who've not been placed yet with disabilities, and they've screened around 60 students and got 37 of them shortlisted for the program that they would be starting off on August 17th. Now the help they've asked for is connection with government, connection with academic institutions that will be interested in engaging in this program, connection with CSR corporates which have disability and employability for disability as a focus area, and also partners who can work with them on an ongoing basis in helping with your capacity building, because it's a new norm right now for any skilling institute, and so is it for Youth for Jobs. So they're moving onto a tech platform. It's all trial and error. So if there is somebody who would like to brainstorm, work with them on that area, more than happy to have them brought into the fold quickly before the launch. For the launch itself, they wanted speakers and panel members. Arshad, who's a new partner, has agreed to be one of the panel members. Pratik, who says he's a lifetime volunteer for us, we kind of supported him, sponsored his stint as a CEO at Samathanam. So he will come in as a moderator. We wanted Chakra to be a key speaker, keynote speaker as an SVP chair and for SVP Bangalore. But I think Chakra has conflict in schedule. I'm still hoping he will move around things and make it happen. If not, anybody else who's interested in the disability space would like to be part of this, please let Sanjana know. Jayashree has been the liaison on the government side. She's bringing in Basavaraju. Awesome there, because Meera was very happy that they didn't have the connect and we could make it happen for the launch itself. So it's all set for a great start. They're going to train 90 students and they promised a placement of 60, which is the usual percentage in the area of PWD, I believe. Yeah.
And this is an incredibly difficult problem to solve, because I remember, I think 5 years back, when even Samarthanam was trying and they weren't succeeding, especially in the placement part. So this is great. I mean, if you get 33% success in placements, it's fantastic.
Right. And another one that we have kickstarted, I just wanted to add it to the investee snapshot slide, is the WMS, Justice and Care.
Yes.
We kickstarted, and the Mysore batch training started as well and ran for 2 weeks before Mysore announced another lockdown.
Yes.
And they're going to restart this week.
Okay.
So we had one more project kickoff that happened quietly.
Lovely.
That's another complex problem for the new members on this call. We are trying to solve a problem of rehab of trafficked women and children who are vulnerable, train them and integrate them into the mainstream.
Yes.
Either they get integrated with their family or integrated into a job stream, whatever works in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sashi. Abu, do you want to provide an update on A3 and
yes,
a lot going on there, please?
Surely, thanks. So we had our project kickoff in July. And after today's Ram's speech, I'm wondering how we bring in more science into our project. Apart from having my wife,
you've got
a partner.
Yeah.
So we're making steady progress. The working plan was reviewed by the core SVP team, which we have further split into specialized groups. So we have a marketing group, we have industry group, and so on. We meet twice a month, so once in 2 weeks. The team from A3 side is in place. They have a project manager. They're looking at an operations manager, which is being recruited. We are lucky to have, thanks to Sujata, our partner, PG Santosh, come in as a marketing expert. He's volunteering his time. The designer evaluation is going on, so we should have a designer on board, most likely pro bono. So all the team building is happening. So also parallelly, the activities are happening. One of our first priority was to set the marketing research in place. The brief for the marketing research was discussed with the team. We are all working on it. It should be out soon. The legal side and the documentation side of the SVP, the A3 Lantana project selling organization is being worked out now. That should also be frozen soon. So the market survey, apart from the market research, should also kick off soon. I would be reaching out to many of our members for various objectives. One of them would be for Market Connect. The other would be even for MR, how SVP members can suggest agencies to help us.
Sure.
So this is where we stand today. We are in progress. I'll be updating as and when required. Our meetings, as I said, are scheduled once in 2 weeks. And that's just a small brief from my side, Jogi.
Fantastic, Abu. This is again one of those things which can have a massive impact, given the it combines environment and livelihood in a very innovative way. So we're really hoping this will take off. So great, thank you, thanks. Padmashri, let's go with our solid waste management. Lots of work happening there as well.
Yeah. Good morning. So. Do I continue from where I left last time, or shall I give a brief description?
Maybe give a brief description.
Yes. So basically, we all know that Bangalore is hopelessly below in its Swachh Bharat ratings. So we have tried to, ever since SVP has made solid waste as its focus this year, we thought this is a good time to start working on, creating a model constituency which follows all the Swachh Bharat guidelines, and create a 7-star constituency. So what SVP did was we connected with SWMRT, who is the think tank on waste, and it's an advocacy body and knows all the things that need to be known, data, etc. about solid waste. We partnered with them, and we have also partnered with some others who know much about waste. So the thing is, in all of this, the structure we created was we have a bunch of operators who will each take care of different waste, like some will do construction debris, some e-waste, some wet waste, some dry waste. So we have a bunch of operators who know Bangalore and who know waste very well.
Yes.
And they will be managed by an organization which is very, very professionally run company like a Justco or a TCE or a Tata Projects. So we wanted someone who can handle large projects and who can handle diverse operators, under them. So, that was the thing. And then we have also talked to the commissioner, the special commissioner, who has supported this completely.
Yes.
So as of now, we have developed a framework which seems very clear in our head and seems moving forward.
Yes.
So in all of this, the magician has been Sridhar.
I was just going to come to that.
Sridhar is our magician.
Is Sridhar on the call?
I don't know.
Not today. He's on like a Tata Trust meeting,
Oh,
so
okay,
he couldn't join. Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree.
But he has been such a magician. All we have to do is, we are stuck here, Sridhar, and he just finds someone to. So he has connected us with Justco, who is Jamshedpur Utilities Corporation, who is running, who are like a small municipal body themselves in Jamshedpur.
Yeah.
So they do everything. They do everything a municipality does, including waste management. So we wanted a program management company which is familiar with waste, not just someone who is very good at managing big projects but have no knowledge about waste.
Yes.
So we had a very good meeting with them, and we seemed extremely aligned in terms of decentralization, door-to-door segregation at source, and all those things. So that meeting has gone well, and we have also sent them some data, etc. So he will in turn speak to his board and get back to us. Yesterday he has messaged that he will be getting back to us soon.
Good.
Now the other thing, yes, Jogi.
No, finish it up. Finish it up, please.
So, but this, since because of COVID, they're unable to come and do any kind of feasibility study. So we thought we will do the DPR and share it with them. So next question again, Sridhar helped us out. He says, I'll talk to DCE and they will help us with the DPR. So we had a meeting with DCE and there was some little alignment issues because they are largely into waste to energy, whereas in Bangalore we will not be taking that path at all. So we explained, and then they said that if we make a framework and give it to them, the scope of the DPR, they will work within that scope. So that framework is already ready because we've had calls every single day within our team.
Great.
And we've created that framework which we will be sending to them today or tomorrow. And we will keep having these meetings, and actually things are now looking like it
can happen.
It can happen. There's a good, it's getting some good shape. So we have what is lovely about this project is the large number of partners who are engaged in this. So we have Shashi, Sridhar, of course, Talha, Usha, and then at a later stage, Sangeeta, Madhu, and Mohan Alexander also will be joining us. And Jogin, let me remind you, you have also said that you will join this.
Yeah, I've said that to a lot of people, so we'll see. Yes, but all jokes aside, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is going to free me up to be a deep
So
partner.
hopefully by what the current plan is, by Jan, we should have it all set. So Ravi was mentioning about a Dhoom Dhadaka launch of this thing, but I don't know if that will happen soon because we'll see. But it's a good idea. It's a good idea. But I think with or without the launch, we should be we should start in Jan. And this week we are meeting the commissioner for presenting this whole project.
Perfect.
Padmashri, also the invisible plumber in this project, Sanjana, like Sridhar said.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Yes. Sanjana has been, and she always is quietly encouraging. She says, "Come on now, you have to push. You have to do this." And so encouraging. She's so encouraging, really. Thank you, Sanjana.
Thank you. Happy to always.
Thank you. Thanks, Padmashri. A quick update on COVID relief. I mean, this is one of those serendipitous things because we were working with St. John's for something else. And finally, again, the invisible plumber, which is Sanjana, came in, and we were able to facilitate a significant amount of donations to St. John's Medical Hospital because Tata Trust and Titan came in, Sridhar was there, Sanjana was there. So it's again a brilliant example of how when like-minded people come together, how, different impacts happen which are not predicted as they were. Kind of like that science thing that Ram was talking about. Because this was not something that was on our agenda. I didn't even know. I actually knew it. I was the first contact to St. John's because of my connections, and I found out only after the donation was made. So it was a very, very good, pleasant surprise for us. And they were very appreciative, obviously, for obvious reasons. There are two specific asks for this month. Do we know, does anybody know a good product development specialist to support A-Tree's Lantana Furniture Initiative? That is the specific ask that has been provided by Abu. And the second is, can you recommend great speakers for the upcoming Y4J program, which Sashi has already talked about for August 17th? These are the two asks. You may please talk, directly revert to Abu and Sashi on these particular things, but it would be great if we can help them and provide these from within our network. Because, so far we've been very lucky in that, and I'm sure you guys will get what you need. But if you don't, obviously you come back to Sanjana and we'll see what we can do, guys. Thank you. So I thought we'll now take 3 slides and then end this thing, and of how we see in what we've done in the last 8 years of SVP and what we can do. 8 years, a little bit less. Okay. And I think what we started with was an exploration phase, right? Where, and I'm not looking at this from who was the chair, what was the year, and etc. But in general for SVP, we struggled on how to select the right NGO, how to define the right engagement, how to get the right lead partner, how do we define success? We struggled a lot on how to define success, right? Contributions, etc., etc. So what did we do? Well, we started off with there are some partners here who know that we started off with this massive thing where we got a lot of NGOs to pitch to us. We had this database that we created, and we worked with a lot of them. In some, we learned from what we could have done better, including the people like Tide, people like industry, capitalized on some of the successes. And like the Vrittis of the world and the Bittis of the world, and I think it is important to say that we got them past the first valley of death, those NGOs. We struggled with defining impact. I mean, we started MGM, assuming that the assumption being that a big team of such highly successful people have to create a big goal, and we struggled a lot with contribution versus attribution of our livelihoods, etc., etc. And we created the platform and processes, obviously, which laid the foundation for today's chapter. A lot of incredible work that has gone on by partners. I'm not going to name them because I'm 100% sure I'll forget somebody, which laid the foundation for what the chapter is today. In the last few years, we've looked at consolidating which is, are there any POCs that are working from the stage 1? What is the kind, sorry, there's a typo. What is the kind of NGO that we should support? And what is the impact we are creating? We ended up defining success as, let's be instrumental in the NGO scale up, right? We had a lot of conversations about the attribution, and we would ask NGOs about how many livelihoods have you created, and they would provide a number. And we would always, depending on whether you're a glass half full or a glass half empty person, you would always look at it with some degree of suspicion that is this really the, and then we finally said, let's be instrumental in the NGO scale. We also became, and in the last 1 to 2 years, we've celebrated our successes and started to become sharper in our insight on what works. So a receptive NGO starts, right? We've had some fantastic NGOs who are very, very big, Sevas and industries of the world. It didn't work. So it's not just what they have done before. It is whether they are in the right frame of mind to work with SVP. And that was important. Plus a good lead partner, plus patience. These are the 3 key ingredients that make things work. And we defined impact as, I actually came back and we had a lot of conversation around it saying, overall, as a chapter, is this journey worth it? right, as an overall, not as a particular NGO. And what we said is, there are a lot of problems that India faces. And if you create a good POC, a good specific POC with non-trivial numbers, we don't want small numbers, non-trivial numbers over 3 to 4 years for solving problems that India faces, and 2 or 3 problems, then that is worthy of the entire journey. That's how I put it in my mind, saying, then it's worth it. Like the 3F model that we created with it, now, that is something that we can then move to the next stage, which is the acceleration phase, right? Where now, again, with MITI as well, we're now looking at putting it in Calcutta and Delhi and so on and so forth. And I'm sure there are a lot of others that will come in. So that was impact for us. I think we are now getting into the most exciting journey for SVP for the next 2 to 3 years, because we've learned a lot of what to do. We've learned a lot of what not to do. We've learned of what is success, what are the recipes for success, how do you generally in your own mind define your own contribution, your own, the reason for existence of the chapter. And we've sorted a lot of that out. And so I think the next journey will be acceleration. Like, how do we capitalize on our successes, and how do we fail fast? How do we shorten the lead time, and what other big problems do we want to solve? So you can already see now, like, for example, all of these that you see, Youth for Jobs, Justice and Care, A3, the solid waste management, the Madiwala project, you can already see a shortening of the lead time from the time we start working with an NGO to the first impact that we are creating, which was a lot before. Now we can see that we are capitalizing on that success and moving a little bit faster, because we know that what to do and what not to do, how to pick the right NGO, how to pick the right partner, etc., etc. So that's why, and I think we have a critical mass of all these 3 things. First is we have fantastic engaged partner talent. As I said, 35 calls in a month doesn't happen because people are not engaged. And this happens month after month. We've had an incredible cohort of new NGOs, the Justice and Cares of the world. I don't want to Tide, etc., etc. We have a very, very good cohort. A3 is now old for me, so I'm not encountering A3, but certainly A3 of the world. And all of these NGOs are looking at solutions for heartbreaking problems. I mean, you spend 5 minutes for a pitch from Justice and Care, and you cannot stop thinking about it. You spend 5 minutes for a pitch from A3 about the lantana problems that are happening, and you cannot stop thinking about it. And there are more such NGOs around. You go into the solid waste management circle, and you're like, my God, something's got to be done. So I would end with, I think what Revati said, it's like a kid in a toy shop or a kid in a candy store. That's the feeling I get for any new partner who wants to join. There is a massive amount of work that needs to be done. There is a massive amount of transformational work that can happen in the next 2 to 3 years. And if we just focus on what we need to do, focus on what not to do, and we are entering an extremely good phase. I'm pretty sure, for the first 3 to 4 years, we said this 3F model and Vritti and etc. I think we are entering a phase where we'll have 5 or 6 significantly scalable models, which we can then spread out across. And if you look at it again, from the 50,000 foot view, is the journey in SVP worth it? If you can say that I was involved with an organization that helped create very, very solid, large proof of concepts to solve some of India's toughest problems, then everything is worth it at that point in time. So I'll end with that. It's been obviously an incredible journey. Couldn't have been done without Sanjana and pretty much everybody here. It's transformed me as a person, because I'm a different person from what I was 5 years ago before I joined SVP. I will once again say this organization is not the ultimate beneficiary of this organization is not the farmer, it is the people on the call. And if we realize that, we will find the time to attend. Then we will find the time to involve ourselves and contribute. And that's the realization I've had. And so I'll end with that. Over to you, Chakra. Good luck. We are obviously here. I'm part of the SEMC, and I will want to be, and I am already involved in TIDE, and I'll be an LP everywhere else. So with that, we would like to end. I can't see.
Yeah, thank you, Jogin. I just want to take a minute, Sanjana, before we wrap up. See, I would like to thank Jogin for the fabulous job he has done as a chapter chair of SVP Bengaluru. See, as you can see in the summary, under his leadership, we improved in pretty much all the metrics we tracked in terms of number of engaged partners, number of engagements, active NGO engagements that have been successful, and the overall impact that we had. More importantly, I think if you can see in the last 3 slides, I think during his time, we have narrowed down our focus and we have a better understanding and a better definition of what kind of engagements to take up. I think that's a big thing that happened. Been involved in this for a long time. I really love the focus with which we are approaching now, going into the next phase. I think it's greatly helpful. The consolidation phase, as Jogin called it.
Yes.
So Jogin will be a tough act to follow. The only thing is I'm happy that he's around and he's here to help us and guide us. So fantastic job, Jogin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, guys. Let's end this and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Chakra.
We're 2 minutes off, but good.
Bye.
Thank you.